This too, that a lot of people are trying to make sense or trying to figure out what is the
8 to 10
backstory with these two brothers. Why would they do something like this? We never know the why, but some of the stuff that's hard to get your head around is this 19-year-old right now that's sitting in this boat. At last check, we heard was alive. Don't know that now. But at last check, this was the man.
I just want to explain to you with bomb squads and how they work in situations like this. What they try to do when they send that robot in, it's got a camera, and it's going to analyze the situation to see what's going on. Now, here we have a live suspect, so that's going to add a certain degree, a certain part of this that usually if they send something in that's the place is empty and they're seeing what's in there. But that device, that robot also can neutralize whatever the threat is on its own. Now, I tend to think, and unless those explosions were a diversionary tactic from the state police, I tend to think that what we heard were some kind of bombs that the suspect had with him, because it happened so quickly. These explosions went off so quickly after the state police set off their perimeter. They're usually much more careful than that.
Hey, Bob, I just want to interrupt you for a moment. We have a new picture on screen right now. This is a picture of a boat that's in the backyard of 67 Franklin Street, where the suspect is. This is where the suspect is holed up in the backyard on Franklin Street. This was sent to us from a Fox 25 viewer just moments ago. Again, this is the boat that suspect number 2 is holed up in. He is surrounded right now. Bob, let me go back to you.
Should be good.
Are you there?
Sure, and yes, I'm here. And as far as we know, suspect number 2 is still alive. But we heard those explosions, as many as 15 explosions, and we do not know the status of suspect number 2. We don't know if those were flash bombs, some kind of diversionary tactic that the state police took because they really want to get this guy out, or we don't know if suspect number 2 had an explosive device on him, and that is what we heard detonate. We just don't know at this stage. It's very tense out here. I'm a few hundred yards away from the house where all this is taking place, but it's very tense. The state police, the authorities, they really want to catch this guy alive. They want to know what exactly was going on and what the real motive was behind these awful bombings at the finish line of the Boston Marathon on Monday.
And it is very dark outside right now, Bob. Can you tell me, did they turn the helicopter spotlight on?
I'm sorry, Sarah, I couldn't hear all of that.
Did they turn on a helicopter spotlight, because it is dark outside right now?
Yeah, I haven't seen that. Usually they'll use some other device, some kind of night vision that they can use rather than a spotlight. I can hear the helicopter, but he hasn't flown over me lately, so I haven't seen him. But it just means he's circling around. They've got a pretty wide perimeter that he's hovering over right now.
Bob, we have a shot of the boat that is in question here that potentially is housing the suspect, and it's a rather large boat, and something that he could almost stand up in if he's not too badly injured. Wow. Inside and peer out, and perhaps that's why he was poking the holes out, just to see. It's in that shrink wrap type material, but he gained access somehow and got inside and maybe was trying to look out and see if anybody had seen it, but was spotted by someone who saw him poking holes apparently, and that triggered what the aftermath was, or he at some point got into there and now he isn't coming out. But we can see it's not a small boat by any means. It's rather large, and something that he could certainly stand up in and look around and maybe walk around in as he peers out to see what his odds are and what type of police presence is around him.
That's interesting. I can't see the boat from where I am. I don't have a monitor out here so I can see what you're showing our audience. But, it's strange because it just shows on one hand some intelligence on suspect number 2 to go find a situation like that and perhaps wait out there all day long. But then, the perimeter was over there. It was a couple city blocks in that direction. That's where all the assets of all the police from New England, New York, the military, that's where they all were for 20 blocks all day long. Suspect number 2, it turns out, it appears he was just a few blocks over here in this direction, maybe the entire time trying to wait this whole thing out. And so you got half of it right, but not the whole equation.
Well, Colonel Albin had said that they went to 20 streets, door-to-door searches were conducted throughout the day. And as you said, this was just outside the perimeter. We do want to bring you up to date on something that we've learned. The Associated Press is reporting that the FBI interviewed the older bombing suspect, that would be suspect number 1, the older brother, in 2011 at the request of foreign government. And at that time, nothing was found. So, interesting development there. Again, the FBI reporting that they interviewed the older bombing suspect at the request of foreign government back in 2011.
And Bob,
that's interesting. He's on the radar. He was on the radar for foreign governments, and he somehow fell through the cracks. That's going to be something else that we're going to have to flesh out in this story as we in the weeks and months ahead.
That'll definitely be part of this investigation. Again, 8 to 10 explosions heard, Bob, and you brought up a couple of good points. It could be a number of things. It could either be that tactic they use to throw flashbang grenades to scare the suspect, but of course it could be from suspect number 2, because we know that he and his brother like these bombs. They like pressure cooker bombs. We know pipe bombs were discovered in or near the house that they were living in Watertown. They were found on Commonwealth Avenue, and of course they were found on the Boston Marathon site.
That's right, and of course, keep in mind this individual, and Bob, you can speak to this as well, involved in that shootout last night. We understand he's injured from that shootout last night. He's in another shootout tonight. I mean, who knows what his condition is right now?
Right, and I mean, there might be a reason why
Bob,
he stayed in one place and couldn't move.
Hold on one second. We are bringing in some new video right now of a gentleman from law enforcement carrying a young girl in his arms, and it's just, you can imagine the fear and shock that she has, but they got her off to safety here. We're not sure if she's injured or not, but she was being carried out by law enforcement, and then a father came running out with a daughter in his arms, it appears. Another member of law enforcement helping that family bring people across. On the line right now is our investigative reporter, Mike Bodette. Mike, this is video just in from earlier tonight, just before nightfall, as the gunshots were ringing out, and we have a number of people helping a family escape the area in which this suspect is holed up in. It would appear as they drew their rifles and got down on the ground and ready right near that house at 67 Franklin Street. What do you know?
Right, it's really incredible video, Mark, when you look at it, and also the fact that this situation has just changed so dramatically since that press briefing we had, and then all of a sudden all this information started coming in. I am being told by my sources as I check in with them that there is a real concern here that this suspect has explosives on him, and that is why they are being so cautious when they go in.
Right.
Now recall, when we had suspect number 1 last night, when we heard from the doctors, they said that he suffered from blast injuries, indicating that he did have some sort of explosives on him, so they're taking it very carefully here. They do believe that he is suffering from some injuries from last night, but again, taking the situation very carefully, very cautiously, and they want this guy alive. They want to be able to talk to him. They want to be able to gather information from him and use him as a resource to figure out why he committed this crime.
All right, so suspect number 2 holed up in the backyard. And again, Mike, they really want to get this guy alive. And you say they are concerned that he has explosives on his body, given it appears that suspect number 1 may have had explosives on his body this morning.
Exactly. That's why they ordered the SWAT team back. That's why they sent the robot in, and that's why they're moving ahead very cautiously. They know he's injured. They believe he's injured from something that went down last night, and now they're moving in, but taking it very slowly, watching him, proceeding with caution, because there is that real concern, and we've seen it with these explosive devices.
And Mike,
go ahead, Ak.
Go ahead. I was just going to say he was involved in the shootout last night. We believe he was injured in that shootout last night, and that's what your sources are saying, right?
Exactly. So they believe he is wounded from last night.
Right, and he had another shootout tonight that he was involved in. You have to wonder about his mental state. He's holed up. He has nowhere to go. He knows he's surrounded. He's obviously dealing with injuries at this point. There is the real concern that he could potentially take his own life before the authorities can get to him.
Right, I think it's got to be a real concern from the start, when you're dealing with someone like this, and that's why we've seen throughout this entire process the authorities proceeding with such caution today, locking down the entire city of Boston, shutting down subway, rail, all forms of transportation, buses, and just telling everyone to stay inside, not only in Boston, but in all those surrounding communities. Why? Well, we know why, because this guy's considered armed and dangerous, and now, as they zero in on him, there's a real concern that he's got explosives on him, like his brother did, and that he could try to not only hurt others, but hurt himself at this point.
You know, we've seen members of ATF, we've seen the SWAT team come in, we've seen several of their trucks in the area go down that street. Again, this is 67 Franklin Street. We're in the backyard. They believe there is a suspect number 2, in the boat, hidden. He was discovered when someone saw him poking holes through the tarp as it was winterized. And it's a large boat, Mike. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, the images, and if he has the ability to stand physically, he could do so and peer out and see what the landscape looks like.
I have seen it, and it just looks, you know, like a pretty wild situation, to say the least. The fact that they're now in on him after hours and hours of searching. I mean, one of the things we've seen throughout this entire week is that we don't always get all the information from authorities. They've got more information than they're actually giving out to all of us. But it is interesting to, again, point out that we had this press briefing, and then within, you know, 10, 20 minutes, all of a sudden we had this major development in the case.
It is incredible how quickly this story can change, because Governor Patrick had said, you know, we don't have a suspect, and he had lifted the, you know, stay in your home warning, and now look at this. We have all of the law enforcement people in our area basically converging on this area on Franklin Street. We've got suspect number 2 holed up in a boat in the backyard. He doesn't want to come out. He is surrounded. There have been explosions, and they want to make sure they get this guy out alive.
Absolutely, that's the goal, because A, they can gather so much intelligence from him about why he committed this awful crime. And we go back to Monday and the Boston Marathon, which seems so long ago now that we've had all these developments throughout the week. But I mean, that's what it comes back to, that these people basically took what is usually a wonderful event in Boston and turned it into terror.
And Mike, I want to follow up. I don't know if you heard this information. We just got this in a short time ago, but that the FBI interviewed the older bombing suspect number 1 in 2011 at the request of foreign government, and nothing was found at the time. And as Bob Borden mentioned, that means he was on the radar, that people knew of him, and he had been, you know, people had investigated him in the past.
I have heard that report as well, and which is interesting, because it makes you wonder how much the authorities knew about this person yesterday. We got those pictures, we got those videos being put out by the FBI late last night. Clearly, that created movement in these suspects, and so I'm sure when this is all said and done, we'll get more information about whether or not they had an idea that this is who they were looking for. Did they release those photos? Did they release that video because they wanted these guys to make a move?
Mike, I have to ask you.
Clearly, they made a move.
Yeah, they did indeed, and this will also go back to their Chechen homeland back in Russia, and perhaps, you know, we had an expert on earlier today talking about the terrorist networks that exist out there. Whether or not he had any contact to that, we don't know, but this will obviously be something they'll look at down the road as well. There was a series of helicopters brought in today. We saw the Blackhawks, and we saw the state police choppers and things of that nature, but there was a specialty copter brought in today as well to lend a hand in the investigation. Can you talk more to that?
Sure. I'm told by my sources that's the FBI's hostage rescue team that they bring in from Quantico, and that's something that they bring in when they have a situation like this. Now, granted, you got to point out that there are a huge amount of resources up here, all the resources of the federal government. We've got hundreds, if not thousands, of investigators converging on Boston, and so it's not completely unusual that you would bring the hostage rescue team in, but I was told that's also an indication that they were ready and willing to move in if something happened.
And Mike, it seems fairly quiet right now since we heard the last explosion, some 8 to 10 explosions, some 15 or 20 minutes ago. Clearly, they're coming up with a strategy right now. How long do you think these guys will wait before they make another move?
I mean, it's so hard to know, Sarah, but I can guarantee you they're moving very cautiously. And the reason they're moving so cautiously is because of that very real concern that this guy has explosives strapped to himself and that he could harm not only himself, but officers and the public in general.
Mike, I want to ask you this as well, getting back to those helicopters that we asked about. Is there a capability where they could use thermal imaging to see, would that have been something they used today to try and see? And again, he is found outside the perimeter, but is that something that they could take up now, fly over and understand whether or not, you know, or had they used it earlier? Could they have used it earlier to try and determine where he was and possibly spotted him in that boat?
I mean, it's certainly a possibility. These guys have all the technology that, you know, you name it, they've got it. So they have the capability to do it. I don't have specific information on whether they used it, but I can only believe that they're using every possible resource that they have.
Fox 25's Mike Bodette. Mike, we appreciate it. We'll keep you on the line here as we take a look again at the video brought into the newsroom and sent into our newsroom by some eyewitnesses on the scene. This is that gunshots that rang out in Watertown this evening. There you have it. Unbelievable developments tonight, shortly after the press conference, and then you had the gunshots ring out. You had officers obviously on the scene. They've got the person held up in a boat in a backyard. This is 67 Franklin Street. Neighbors were just 20 minutes earlier said you can go out, and you know, the lockdown has been lifted. Some people were out and they captured this type of video. How disturbing for them and how nerve-wracking at the same time to hear gunshots ring out once again. Right after they were told, you know, that all clear is given to a point, and they want you to be vigilant, but they said you didn't have to stay in your home anymore. For the folks in Watertown, they've been in their homes for so long after last night's ordeal into today.
And it was just so interesting at that press conference with the governor as we listened to this video of shots being fired, some 20 to 30 shots fired just a short time ago, some 1 hour ago. And about 20 minutes after the governor had held his press conference, it was quiet there at the press conference, but then suddenly the entire team at that press conference swiftly moved to the new scene on Franklin Street at 67 Franklin Street, where the suspect number 2 is holed up in that boat that you see right there. He is holed up. We told he is injured from the gunfight that happened this morning where his brother was killed in a gunfight. There's worry that he may be strapped with explosives. That is a worry because not only could he hurt himself, and we don't want him to hurt himself because we want information, but he could hurt other people. We want to go to Bob Ward, who is on the phone right now. Bob?
It's Bob. I'm on live television here, and it is still a tense situation here, really still a standoff situation. You can see where we are being held back with the press. The scene where everything is taking place is a couple hundred yards in that direction. That's where the boat is. That's where the house is, the backyard, where everything is playing out. We heard that gunfire earlier this evening and then just ran down here, myself, a couple of photographers, and we moved our live truck to get a better position here so we can give you a better idea what's going on. And we weren't down here more than just a half hour or so. Then we started hearing those explosions, about 15 of them, and now everything is just kind of quiet. It's an eerie quiet right now, waiting to hear what has happened. If the suspect number 2 is still alive, if he's going to surrender himself, what is taking place. We're a good distance away, and as I said, it's an eerie calm right now here in Watertown, just waiting, and it appears the standoff is very much still in effect. This is far from over.
Bob, I'm struck by the fact that, you know, earlier in the week we had these vigils to the victims. We had them on Boston Com, we had them at Garvey Park in Dorchester, people coming together, and tonight we have the law enforcement community coming together in Watertown en masse and doing much like you're saying, just standing there holding vigil, wondering what's happening in that backyard with that individual and that suspect who everybody has been looking for, putting so many resources at work to try and capture this individual, and now it comes down to this, a backyard in a boat.
Right, they've got him surrounded. And it's interesting, when they started taking down the perimeter that was set up all day long here in Watertown, we started seeing the police break down and start moving in their armored personnel carriers, start leaving. But then all of a sudden we heard that gunfire, and then out of nowhere, mostly what I saw were Mass State Police just tearing down the road, down Arsenal Street at a high rate of speed into the direction where the gunfire was coming from. We followed as best we could and ran in as best we could in time to see police officers rushing to that area. You saw the video of other police evacuating a building nearby, carrying a child, just doing whatever they have to do. They really want to get this over. Don't forget, in addition to the horror of what happened on the Marathon Monday, 3 people killed, nearly 200 people hurt. Just last night, 2 of their own were attacked. A MIT police officer shot and killed, a transit police officer shot and badly wounded. They take this stuff personally. They want this over. They want to get this guy alive, and this could go all night. We just don't know.
Yeah, we're looking at more neighbors being evacuated from around that house located at 67 Franklin Street in Watertown. This is earlier in the evening as they were being taken away after gunshots rang out at about 6:25. We've had several pieces of video brought into the room from people who have witnessed these gunshots. You can just see these harrowing pictures right here. And from what I understand, all we understand at the moment is that these individuals are okay. They just needed to be rushed out of harm's way. And certainly we hope that is the case.
This is a residential neighborhood, lots of families there, and you can imagine the horror as these 20 to 30 gunshots went off, followed by 8 to 10 explosions. And Bob, if you're still on the line, if you would describe those 8 to 10 explosions that you heard just a short time ago.
Sarah, I'm going to say it was more than that. I think it was as many as 15 because a few of them started going off. I wasn't counting them, and because it just took us by surprise. We weren't ready for it. There were 2 or 3 explosions, then a pause, then 2 or 3 more, then another pause, and it went on like that for about a minute and a half. Now, that could have been flash bombs of the state police creating some kind of diversion to get this guy out of that boat. That's very well could be what this was, but it was not one of these instances where we got warning that there was going to be some controlled explosion, which we've heard ever since Marathon Monday. It was not one of those. It just suddenly started happening, and it was very surprising to all of us. So you've got the gunfire, you've got the explosions. I think it's amazing how these first responder police officers, they just selflessly rushed to the scene, did what they could to get people out of those buildings, trying to protect those children, knowing full well that shots had been fired, knowing full well that suspect number 2 might be armed with explosives himself. They went in there anyway to do what they could to get that area cleared out, to make sure people were safe. They put others ahead of themselves. Absolutely amazing what is unfolding here in Watertown right now.
All right, Bob, you hang right there. We're going to go to the phone right now. Perhaps one of the neighbors in that neighborhood we've been talking about for so long, 67 Franklin Street, can shed some light on tonight's events that have taken place there. On the line with me right now is Evan Goodman. And Evan, explain, if you would, it's Mark Ocklum along with Sarah Underwood, where you are in relation to 67 Franklin Street.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically my house is Franklin Street, and we're about 2 or 3 houses up from the actual site. So what happened was the ban was lifted, and basically we had to, my father and I went outside to walk our dog to get a little fresh air because we saw some people walking around, and we went around the corner to just talk to one of our neighbors on Center Street, which is parallel to Franklin Street. And while we were outside, we just see a flood of police cars coming down the street, and they're moving very, very fast. And basically, we were just told, get in the house as soon as possible. And at that point, we just heard a very, very loud pop, 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 pop. And, I don't exactly know what that sound was, but from, my experience and what was told to me, it sounded like, a pressure cooker going off, one of those kind of makeshift bombs that the Marathon bomber, used. And so we all rushed inside. We're in Center Street, completely parallel to our house, 83 Franklin Street, and that's where we are right now, and we just took cover. We're on the ground right now.
Where do you think the suspect was shooting? Do you have any idea? Was he shooting out from the boat, the backyard? Do you have any idea where the gunfire was taking place?
Yeah, so basically we heard all the gunfire. From what it sounded like, it was, right on the corner, basically from behind the house. I know exactly where that boat sits because, he's our neighbor.
Okay, so you've seen the boat, the neighbor, but why don't you tell me right there, what's the status of the people in the home?
We don't know. All I know is that I got a call from my neighbor directly to the right of me, if you're looking at my house straight on, and basically they have a lot of SWAT team in there. They have a sniper in there taking aim at the boat right now, so that's all that I know. And I'm looking out the window, and I can just see, a plethora of SWAT members and police officers hiding behind houses, walking into houses, taking aim at the boat, and just making sure the whole neighborhood is secure.
Incredible scene, and I'm sure so unnerving to you. What about, did you see some bloody clothing? I heard there was some bloody clothing around.
The only news that I heard of blood, I didn't actually see anything with my eyes, but, our neighbor called the police officers, notifying them that there was some blood coming out of the boat. And, that's how it was kind of reported to us, and that's kind of the only thing that I know about a bloody T-shirt or blood coming out of anywhere.
Repeat that again for the folks at home. You're saying that a neighbor spotted blood coming out of the boat?
That, from my understanding, that is how it was reported to the police officers, was that the neighbor whose house the boat was sitting in called the police officers and said, there is blood coming out of the boat, and that's how they were notified. That's how it was told to me, and you can take it with a grain of salt if you want.
And where is your house? I'm sorry, in relation to this scene.
Right. So I'm about 2 houses up. My house is 83 Franklin Street. So we were, right in the vicinity of everything. We actually don't know what's happening at our house right now. It could have gotten broken into and kind of taken over by the police. Like I said, we're parallel to Franklin Street right now. All we can hear are helicopters overhead. We see SWAT cars going by, and we heard all the gunfires going off. We heard the pressure cooker going off, and other than that, we don't know too much else.
We're on the line right now, with Evan Goodman. He is a neighbor to the home that is in question here, 67 Franklin Street, where we believe that the suspect is holed up in a boat in the backyard. And I want to just ask you again, Evan, on the boat itself and the neighbor seeing the blood coming from the boat, did they inform authorities? You said they did. Was it before the shootout?
Right. So,
and how long? Can you give me a time period?
How long did they notify? So they basically, from what I know, notified them a few minutes. That's how they got the tip-off, was that, the neighbor called into the police officers and said, there's blood coming from my boat. The police officers immediately, rushed to the scene, and that's when we were told to get in the house. And about 5 minutes after that was when the pressure cooker went off.
Right. This goes to something that we had earlier in the night, and this helps confirm that, in the fact that one of our sources had said that the suspect in the boat had been injured in a gunfight last night in Watertown. So this would go to that, because then they saw the blood coming from the boat, notified authorities, and that was the tip that ultimately brought them to this address right here, where the standoff continues. And we understand now that a hostage negotiation team has been brought in and is on scene as well.
Yeah, from my understanding is, all the information that I've gathered was, the suspect, took cover. He knew that he couldn't get out because there were, the streets were absolutely swarming with police officers. So he took cover in this boat. He was there all day. He was literally lying in a boat 2 houses down from us the whole day. And that's what we believe. We know we'll find out the answers later on, but it was absolutely just a scary, scary thing to think about.
I just can't imagine, for your sake and for everyone else who's there, that this is happening right there in your neighborhood. The picture that we're looking at right now is really, really dark, Evan. If you can see what we're seeing in the neighborhood, if you're right there, can you tell us exactly what it looks like around the house right now, exactly what's going on? We know a hostage negotiator is on scene, but what does it exactly look like?
So from what I can see, there were a few helicopters overhead shining a pretty bright light, and there are some lights kind of shining through the houses, but I can't get a very, very good look. And my father actually just walked in the house. He said, everybody was cheering, and there's a big cheer.
Let's go live to Fox 25's Bob Ward. Bob, take it.
Hey guys, I don't know what this signifies, but just heard applause coming from the direction of where the suspect number 2 was holed up. I can't see that far into the darkness. You can see how dark it is, but there was a round of applause just a few moments ago coming from that area. And I'm talking like 30 seconds ago, we heard some applause from that area. So that's the only thing I can tell you that's changed. Other than that, it has been deathly quiet out here, waiting for some word of what's taking place in there.
Well, we have Private Investigator Tom Shamshak on hand here with us here in the studio, and
law enforcement sources.
Yeah, and right now I'm going to go out to Jared Holbrook. We'll stand by here, Tom. I'm going to go to Jared Holbrook. Jared?
Well, dozens of people out here have big smiles on their faces, and I'll tell you why. Because we heard the police officer saying, suspect in custody, suspect in custody. And I reached over to a law enforcement source of mine, and I said, did you get him? And he says, we got him. And he, with a big smile and a thumbs up, he says, we got him. So,
well, Jared,
it's amazing.
That is wonderful news, Jared, and that was something that Tom Shamshak was about to tell me moments ago, but you actually had it right there for us, and we appreciate that the suspect is indeed in custody. And we thank Evan Goodman, by the way, the neighbor who was with us on the phone, who had provided all those details about what led up to it today. Again, the suspect is in custody. This is suspect number 2, we believe, from the Boston Marathon bombings on Monday. The younger brother of suspect 1, who perished in a shootout last night with police.
Again, a tense scene just wrapping up at 67 Franklin Street. As we watch the ambulance drive away, which we assume possibly suspect number 2 is in that ambulance going away. He is under arrest. Big smiles from the cops. We heard there was a lot of applause. This has been a long investigation. The day has been incredible, with 20 shots fired, explosions, and a suspect holed up at 67 Franklin Street. A hostage negotiator came on scene, and moments later we heard there was an arrest.
Exactly right. In a moment tonight where everyone cheered, and you can imagine the exhale in Watertown tonight, and indeed all of Boston and Massachusetts, and really across the country, to know that the second suspect has been taken into custody. And this is the ambulance leaving now. We understood he was injured. We were told that he had obviously injuries that were, we don't know if they were life-threatening or not, but that he was definitely compromised. They found him in the boat tonight. They surrounded him. They sent in a robot. They ultimately decided, you know, it was time for himself to give up, and he did.
That is right. Suspect number 2, if you are just turning on right now, suspect number 2 has been arrested after a long negotiation and a stand-up outside of Franklin Street in Watertown. Let's go to Bob Ward.
And Mark.
What a great moment, huh? That applause. We knew that applause had to signify something, and it did. Jared Holbrook getting it confirmed. I also got it confirmed from one of the law enforcement out there saying that he is in custody.
Bob, that's just tremendous news, and what a relief for everyone in the state of Massachusetts, as I said earlier, and certainly for people like the victims' families and who lost so much, people who lost limbs and everything else, to know that these 2 perpetrators are off the streets. And I would talk to you more about this in a moment, but I want to see if we can bring in Jared Holbrook. And Jared, did you have a chance to see inside that ambulance at all?
We saw the ambulance pass by, and then it's been stationary for a long time. We haven't seen it go back by, but Mark, I'll tell you, I was sitting there listening to, watching some home video that somebody shot right next. Okay, let me interrupt here. I'm hearing applause from the crowd right now. Applause from the crowd. Everybody's screaming, yay. They're excited that the suspect has been in custody here. Now, I was sitting here watching some home video of somebody shot on their cell phone right next to where the gunshots were going off, right there. And our friend Paul from earlier talking about the series of gunshots, I heard them on this home video. He was not exaggerating.
Jared, let me just interrupt you. Boston police have confirmed this as well. Just want to, I don't think we can say this over too many times, certainly. We're getting a number of confirmations now from all different types of people, and people need to hear that to be reassured that, in fact, this suspect number 2 is in custody, and they can breathe a sigh of relief today.
That's exactly right. And Jared, if you're still there, I think what was I thought it was so concerning that we didn't know how this was going to end. We heard so many shots fired, 20 to 30 shots, and then some 15 minutes later, we heard a number of explosions, and there was a concern that explosives may have been strapped to this body. So it's just interesting how this has unfolded.
Now the question is, where is this suspect right now? Because, you know, we can't get that close to the scene, obviously. No one can with the press, but you wonder if potentially this suspect is in an ambulance that's coming by. And I put that to Bob and Jared, if they have any type of vantage point to know whether or not he's driven out already, if he's on the way out, if he indeed needs to be in an ambulance or just in a cruiser at this point.
Yeah, Mark, I've seen 3 cruisers leave, nobody in the back seat right now. I would imagine if he's injured, he's going to be in an ambulance, and I would imagine they're going to take him to a hospital nearby and get him treated for his injuries. It's very important for them that they get him alive. All the information that this man may have about any possible future cells or anything,
it appears
they're going to want to get that from him.
In relation to us, in relation to us looking down the street, which is where our vantage point is, it appears there's some type of large vehicle making the turn. Now that could be anything from an ambulance to perhaps one of the SWAT team trucks to something else. An armored carrier as well, I'm sure, is brought into the area. But we're going to wait and see. It's making its way down here, and perhaps that'll give us an indication whether or not this could potentially be the suspect in this ambulance. But the bottom line is the suspect is in custody, and everyone needs to know that. Suspect in custody.
This is... And Mark, what a tremendous job these law enforcement officials did. If you look at how they approached this scene, they had to act fast and aggressive, and they just sat there. They knew there was going to be possible gunfire fired back at them. They knew there may be explosives that they had to deal with, and for this to all end like this, they did a great job. A great job.
Obviously, as well, the neighbor did a great job in making the tip that ultimately led the police to this residence, because he was aware and saw blood coming from the boat and realized something's amiss here. Immediately called authorities, and it wasn't long after that they got into that backyard and realized exactly what they had.
And you have to imagine the relief that the people of Boston and Cambridge and Watertown and the whole state of Massachusetts are feeling right now, that these guys, suspect number 2 dead, or suspect number 1 dead, and suspect number 2 now in custody. People can go outside now and feel safe. This has come to a great end, and that's why there was applause on Franklin Street tonight.
A number of law enforcement officials now making their way back towards us here down the street from the address, which is 67 Franklin Street, where they have been for quite some time. Actually, it was 6:25 when the shots rang out, so it's now 8:49 in the evening, and you're seeing as the crews are making their way back from the home, it would appear. Certainly it's a crime scene. They'll be down there looking it over as well. Now we're seeing a fire truck come by here, and that's going to block our view for a moment, but certainly a lot of relief in Watertown tonight and all over the Commonwealth as suspect number 2 is in custody. And you can hear even the people who were standing, 10, 15 deep, neighbors coming out to see what was going on here, thanking the law enforcement officials who have just put in exhaustive hours, you can imagine, these last several days ever since those horrific bombings on Monday. And then tonight, they got their man.
They have been working around the clock so hard, day and night, and they have been through so much. As you see them walk down Franklin Street, just relieved. They put their guns down. They don't have to put them up again after just an incredible 4 days of finding these suspects and having gun battles and dealing with explosives and then tonight finding the suspect holed up in the back of 67 Franklin Street, the shots fired again, and fear that the suspect may have an explosive strapped to his body. A hostage negotiator went into the scene just a short while ago, and shortly after that we heard that the suspect number 2 of the Boston Marathon bombings is in custody.
What an incredible week as it wraps up here on a Friday night, having started so horrifically on Monday with the bombings at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Of course, 3 lives lost, more than 170 people injured, a lot of them critically and very badly hurt. And then we started with the investigation, and people wanted information, and information was postponed. We didn't get a lot. Then, of course, you had the press conference where it was revealed that we did have photos. We had a photo prior to that press conference that put a face to the problem, that put a face to who these individuals might be. And then, of course, the public weighing in, providing pictures and providing video, and ultimately the shootouts last night, the capture today. Again, suspect 2 in custody. Bob?
Yeah, what an amazing turn of events tonight, and awesome, awesome news that suspect number 2 is in custody. He's in the ambulance. He's being led away to try to go get some help. But it's not over yet for state police. I understand they're still up in that area, and now they have to do another job, and that is they have to sweep that area for explosives. Right. Isn't that amazing? They still don't know if this guy had any kind of explosives on him. If he denied he had explosives, they're not going to take his word for it. They're going to go through, they're going to sweep that area to make sure that there are no explosives of any kind left behind.
And Bob, I think what's so important about this as well is that they got him, and they got him alive. And this is so key because they need him alive to understand what his motive was and if anyone else was connected to this plan.
No, I know. It is so crucial that they got him alive. Just think about how difficult it was to not only capture this guy, but to identify him, to capture him, and to capture him alive. You're talking about someone who may have had the inclination to commit suicide.
I don't know if you can hear this right now.
But they got him alive.
Jared Holbrook, take it away.
That's applause from the crowd. There are dozens of people out here smiling, clapping, and yelling. Very excited crowd out here that this has come to a resolution, that they have a suspect in custody. All of the hours, the tireless hours that they put in to this investigation, the smiles, I'm seeing law enforcement officers shaking hands, and they're just ecstatic. You know, earlier today, you could see how everyone lost sleep. You see the look on their face. Law enforcement officials, they're tired, but they're punching through. And now there's just a sudden burst of energy, and it's just all smiles. It's great.
Certainly is.
You know, think about it. Think about it. Some of these men and women who are working this case, they have been up since yesterday. They didn't get any sleep all night long because all the events that took place starting at 10 and 11 o'clock last night. And they stayed on the job all those hours until finally today we not only get an arrest, but we get this guy alive. Absolutely amazing. It shows the dedication these men and women have to their job. They are highly trained professionals, and they got the job done.
And Bob, I just want to put this week in perspective a little bit as we take a look at these images of police walking back and not running around frantically and trying to get to the next scene and trying to find the next clue to try and apprehend this individual who, again, is in custody. The mayor of Boston, Tom Menino, tweeting tonight, "We got him." Let's talk about it, though, because we started off on Monday with the horrific bombings, the 3 people dead, the 170-plus suffering just catastrophic injuries in some cases. We had press conference after press conference from the hospitals updating us on their status, the spirit of the people, but also the grave nature of their injuries. Then on Tuesday, we had the bomb scares at the courthouse, the Moakley courthouse.
The crowd is clapping again. The ambulance went by. And I'm told he's not in that ambulance, that actually he's in the other one going the other way. So, Bob, he's probably coming your way.
Well, let's stop here and hear this then. Bob?
Yeah, we'll watch out for him. We'll definitely watch out for him, Dan. The ambulance might be coming down.
All right, guys.
Ambulance might be coming this way if you see it. If you see an ambulance, it's going to be him. But, you know, it's absolutely amazing, guys, that they were able to do this and to capture him alive. You know, that tweet that the mayor put out is very close to the one I just put out that said they got him. Because that's what it's all about, those words. And you think about where we were on Marathon Monday with those bombs going off with no idea who detonated those bombs, who was behind it. And here we are at the end of the week, on the Friday after the Boston Marathon. We have a suspect, number 2, under arrest and still alive.
And Bob, let me just say here, law enforcement officials went by, federal law enforcement officials on the intercom. On the intercom,
guys, here comes the
saying,
ambulance.
God bless America.
Here comes the ambulance. Here comes the ambulance. Going right by me now. Are you in the air? All right, there's the ambulance. Suspect number 2. Suspect number 2 on that Boston EMS ambulance, being led by Mass State Police escort in the front and behind. Lights on. This is a proud day for the Massachusetts State Police and for all law enforcement across New England.
Bob, that's a beautiful sight. Beautiful sight and a welcome sight, Bob.
And Bob, not only did Mayor Menino tweet, "We got him." Oh, we do know he's going to Mount Auburn Hospital, but Bob, if you can hear me, not only did Mayor Menino tweet that we got him, but just a moment ago, he could be heard over the scanners telling all the law enforcement and everyone, the fire, EMS, everybody, congratulations, job well done, and what a great job.
And so right now, all the law enforcement officials are leaving the scene. The crowd is going nuts, clapping and screaming. A federal agent car went by, and on the intercom, he yelled, "God bless America," and the crowd just went crazy. He said it several times. It was great. Let me tell you, what was it like for you to hear that when he drove by?
It was unbelievable. It was like exhilarating, so exciting, so proud to be an American right now and happy this has come to an end.
Smiles on everyone's faces, and these law enforcement officers certainly deserve the respect that they're getting right now. They feel like rock stars. They're pointing out the window. You'd think they just won the World Series. It's great. Just great. They deserve it.
Absolutely. This is one of those nights you'll remember for the rest of your life, where you were when they arrested the second suspect and brought what we hope is the closure to what has just been an incredibly harrowing week and many respects, an awful week in the city of Boston.
What an incredibly tense night. I mean, we have all been on the edge of our seats, not only us here in the media, but you at home watching this unfold. To hear the shots fired, 20 to 30 shots fired, followed by explosions, not knowing if suspect number 2 had explosives on themselves. And then to hear that he was captured and that he's still alive, and we can get information from him now. He can be interviewed, and we can find out why he did this. Was he connected to anybody else? And what a great job well done as you look at live pictures of the ambulance carrying suspect number 2 of the Boston Marathon bombings.
Being transported, as you can see, to Mount Auburn Hospital, and again, a welcome sight for all these members of law enforcement, these people in these neighborhoods of Watertown, and of course for all the victims and their family members and friends who wanted to get these people caught and have them stand for their crimes. Well, one of them is deceased at this point, no longer able to inflict the type of harm and devastation that he did earlier in the week, and now you have his brother in custody, headed to the hospital, but in custody and under arrest, more importantly, so they can at least try and find some reasoning as to why they performed the egregious actions that they did earlier in the week. Bob?
Every car that goes by gets applause. I love it.
Guys, I just got to tell you that when they came by here, the state police escorting that ambulance through this parking lot and onto the hospital, it was just about 3 hours ago that I saw a similar escort, only that was for the transit police officer's police cruiser.
Right.
What a juxtaposition of images in just a short period of time. And it really drives home what has happened here in the last 24 hours, from the horrors of a murder and a shooting of 2 police officers overnight to finally apprehending suspect number 2.
That's right, Bob, and we're looking at these officers coming back, these members of law enforcement, and you know, for so long over the last several days we've seen them holding their guns at the ready, and now they're holding cell phones to their ears and probably telling their loved ones and friends it's over.
They have got to be so proud of themselves, and you just have to imagine what all of the victims' families and the survivors who are in the hospital right now, their eyes are on the television sets right now as well, just as ours are, and they must be just so relieved, and I'm sure there is great applause in those hospitals right now as well.
And we want to update folks that there is a briefing planned apparently at the Watertown Mall as well, where they'll be able to update us on just what went down perhaps in that backyard, but they can certainly talk more. And what a change of events and tone and tenor that will be, given what they gave us at 6:05 when they had their last press briefing and said, you know what, the lockdown has been taken down, but be vigilant and go about your business, but we still don't have a suspect. Well, now they have that suspect in custody, and you can imagine it is going to be a joyous press conference as, you know, they try to say, you know, look, it's over. All these efforts paid off. And, you know, there's still, you know, we're never going to be the same after what happened on Monday, certainly, but this is something to finally smile about after a very long and disturbing week for so many.
And just think about how much has happened in the last 3 hours, Mark. I mean, it was 3 hours ago that the governor, along with all the other authorities, were standing before us saying we don't have a suspect. We're essentially sorry. We're lifting the stay-at-home ban. Go about your normal business, but we don't have a suspect. We're following a lot of leads, and then, bam! They find him in the backyard on Franklin Street, and they get him after a number of explosions. They get him, and now he is in custody, and just so many smiles.
And you could tell the frustration level was really mounting on the officials that were there. By the way, all those officials that were at that press conference were all down the street here tonight to witness this just great event as far as the investigation is concerned. Let's go down to Lily Hopkins, who's in that throng of media right there. Lily?
Hey, yeah, guys, just wanted to show you guys, we're just talking actually to a SWAT team that was backing its truck out of the area here, and these guys said it was a long night, and they were just trying to make a hole here. As you can see, a huge crowd of people have gathered on Mount Auburn Street, also at the intersection of Franklin Street. You can see the Boston Police armored vehicles heading out now, and listen to this. I mean, a round of applause from the crowd here. They know these guys have done an incredible job, and they've admitted tonight they are tired. They had sweat on their brow as they were coming up here, and even as some people that had gathered in the crowd here were sitting on the bumper of the SWAT car that had been parked here at the Church of the Good Shepherd here in Watertown. They were smiling as they said, hey, I kind of need my vehicle to go home. So the spirits are high here, not only from the crowd, which is again breaking into applause, as you can hear.
Lily, can you go and ask some of those people how they feel? Why don't you go talk to some of those people right there? Can you grab somebody?
Yeah, as a matter of
Curious
fact.
to hear what these Watertown residents have to say.
I just noticed, we're live on Fox 25, and I just noticed that you guys were part of the crowd that was cheering here. Had you been watching long, and what do you think of the job that the emergency crews have done?
How long have we been here? How long have we been here?
I don't know, about like 45 minutes.
About 45 minutes or so. Did you hear any of the bangs?
Yeah, we heard the flashbangs.
Flashbangs. Do you guys live in the area?
The next street over.
Yeah, so this must have been incredibly scary for you guys to know this was all happening and descending upon your neighborhood here. I mean, there were times where he was in this zone where you lived.
We were locked in the house all day. We weren't allowed out, so.
Yeah. So how do you feel now that it's all
relieved.
over? Yeah.
Very relieved.
And so. What do you think of the bursts of applause that are coming through here as the law enforcement officers?
They deserve it. They've done a wonderful job all day.
Yeah. Sense of relief for you as well, I imagine?
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
It's good, yeah.
So a little sampling of people really relieved here in Watertown as law enforcement officials are heading out of the area. And once again, you hear the crowd breaking into applause. Guys, back to you.
All right, Lily, thank you very much. And again, the applause continues for law enforcement officials who work so diligently in so many hours, exhaustive hours, turning over every stone, trying to figure out whether or not the suspect was here or there. And now I understand we have Tom Menino congratulating the workers. Let's listen in. Boston Mayor.
When you see the picture, there it is. Go ahead.
Oh, there you go. So Mayor Menino today tweeted this picture out to all of his followers, and I'm sure he has thousands and thousands of him. He says on the police radio, "Your mayor is very proud of you." And there you have it.
Indeed, what a week it has been for the mayor as well, who checked himself out of the hospital to get into this whole effort to try and bring these people to justice, and was there at the press conferences after having surgery just this past weekend for a broken leg. The governor, of course, we had the President of the United States come in here on Thursday, and maybe that was the last time we heard applause until today. The President gave a rousing speech, certainly, at that interfaith service, and then now we have people cheering on these law enforcement officials, and we had them cheering them on at the Bruins game earlier in the week. People really genuinely care about the job these agencies have done, how they've collaborated, how they got the job done, and that's the main thing.
Here we go, another round of applause for a job well done. Suspect number 2 at the Boston Marathon bombings in custody at this hour after a standoff with police on Franklin Street in Watertown. Neighbors, media, onlookers coming around to say thank you to all the law enforcement agencies that helped catch suspect number 2.
Again, this all took place at 67 Franklin Street in Watertown. It's about 6:25, 6:30 in the evening when reports came in that shots rang out, and then the police were off and running. And I know Bob Bew, along with our Heather Hedges, who had talked about the suspect being holed up in that boat, saw the police presence and how it was being dedicated down to this area of Watertown, and we knew